We know he's a truther. Matt's got him everywhere that I've seen him draft. And once someone tells me that they're interested in one of my players, I almost want to make sure that they get them. So
they know that Jake shat all over his own draft.
I know it's obviously a little bit homery of me to pick my own dude that I picked.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another DU draft review. This edition is covering Dynasty Underdog Listener League 3, our third ever Listener League. Super excited to get into this again. We've had a really good time doing these. So if you watched our last episode, you noticed that was a draft that was a little bit more on ADP, right? It was following ADP. It was a little bit more typical draft. This one here, I would consider substandard. Kind of like our first one, there's just some picks that just don't make much sense or just in a range that they don't necessarily need to be in. I mean, AD Mitchell definitely stands out, but like guys like Rattler and Brendan Rice also, I think, were a little higher than they should have been. Honestly, the third round is riddled with some odd picks, some picks that just don't really match what you're seeing in the market. So we're going to get into it a bit here, but again, just talking about it from a holistic standpoint to start out. So Jake, tell me a little bit about one of the players you feel that was picked far too high here.
Yeah, I think it's AD Mitchell is the one who screams out to me, sitting at the 112. Our boy Matt, we know he's a truther. Matt's got him everywhere that I've seen him draft. I think the reality is that if you're getting AD Mitchell anywhere and he's your guy, you should be trading back. Trade out of that 112, acquire a second. Maybe that's where you want to be. I think you can even probably find a way to get like the 203 and like the 208. And you're in fine range to get AD Mitchell at either of those picks. That's the worst part about AD Mitchell is like, I'd be happy with him somewhere in that like 207 to 210 range. And so you're acquiring him here at the 112. If you're going to go for AD Mitchell, like I just think that you have a better shot at trying to get him, somewhere in that mid to late second round area. What about you?
Yeah, and again, I think there's so much opportunity to trade in these drafts in general. Like this year, it feels like the values are so in flux and everybody is not in agreement. So there's always opportunity to either trade back or trade up. And I feel like if you're Matt here, just put in the work, which I know it sucks. Like sometimes it's work and you're not getting the offers, but put in the work and try to move back, man. Like I think you can gain 2 picks in the second round, pick up AD Mitchell and pick up something else or a third round pick on top of it, and get your Theo Johnson there, get whoever you really like there, but you can add an extra pick on top of AD Mitchell if that's what you want to do. So that would be my idea. But I do think it's worth touching on real quick before we move on from here. You had some success trading in this draft as well, but trading up. So let's talk a little bit about this trade. It ended up being Pacheco, Gray. What Gray is that?
That's Eric Gray. He's
sorry,
running back on the Giants. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm thinking of like Jonas Gray going back like forever. Pacheco, Eric Gray 1.09, which turned into Brian Thomas Jr. for 309, Rattler, and 104 Neighbors. I thought this was a super heady move, dude. To be able to, like, I like Brian Thomas Jr. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be a fine player. I'm not super high on Pacheco. Eric Gray is just a throw in. 104, but to get up there to select, one of the top 3-4 players in this draft for some stuff like, BTJ's a mystery box. Pacheco could be back of the roster in a year or two. And you're talking about a long-term item at wide receiver. So I thought this was a really heady play. And I guess I'm just wondering your thoughts on it and how it went about, how you kind of got there.
Yeah, it was a trade that took a lot of time, honestly. We probably started negotiations all the way back in February, like right around Super Bowl time. AJ had reached out saying that he was interested in Pacheco. And once someone tells me that they're interested in one of my players, I almost want to make sure that they get them. So it is one of those things where I had to start thinking about the different ways to maneuver through this draft and how I can kind of find a way to package the 109 and Pacheco for the 104. I was honestly trying to trade up into any of those top the 3 to 5 range, anywhere between 103 to 105. I thought I could probably do something with that package. And, I just started slightly adding a little additional assets throughout that 2 to 3 month range. And you know what? It finally hit on draft day. Right when the draft started, I sent out an offer. It was, I think, still like midnight or like in the middle of the night for AJ in Australia, and then found myself to an acceptance while he was waking up, and it was really one of those things where
Caught him off guard. That's what you did.
I think so. And I also think that, and he told me point blank, he said that he didn't see that much of a gap between Neighbors and some of the wide receivers at the end of the round, which is completely valid. If that's your value on it, and you gain a starting running back this year, and you also gain potentially a second string quarterback who could be a starter and who knows how long, it could be very valuable for him. Me, on the other hand, I needed to get the elite asset that I knew that I needed on my team. And I didn't think that I overpaid for him at all. And so I found myself in a situation where I was actually kind of taking off bodies that were going to be added to my team that now I don't have to get rid of moving forward, and kind of trim or slim down my roster a little bit more and adding more elite assets. So that's kind of the place in mind that I had myself. And I was really happy that this trade got through. And honestly, he was really happy too. And that's the perfect trade, is when both sides of the trade are just as equally thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely. Consolidating, I think, is a good thing to be looking to do most of the time. And you consolidated some good assets into a great asset. That's how I feel about that. And also, I think this is a good opportunity to just point out the planning and execution that took place and the effort and commitment that took place. I kind of talked about that at the beginning of like trading back. And it, like, if you put in the work, man, like, you're going to see some results, like you are. And over time, you had an idea of what you were trying to do, and you kind of slow played it and just got it to the point that made the most sense. And you even waited till it was on the clock, right? Like you waited until on the clock, when sometimes that's the most value that anybody's ever going to get for a pick. But in this case, I think you made out like a bandit. So it was a really heady play. I love that. So I wanted to touch on that before we move on to, the regular scheduled programming here. But let's do that. Let's move on to it. Let's talk about it. Okay, so for me, a player that was picked far too high in this draft was Jared Wiley. This is a guy, a tight end. He went 311, who I don't think we've seen picked in any of our other drafts in our listener leagues. So it just wasn't necessary. You don't need to do it. And that's really, I don't think we need any more reasoning than that. You didn't need to do this. Other players you could have picked. I mean, Kamani Vidal. Whew, man, people are going to look back at these drafts and be really upset with themselves. And he might not be the one who hits, but like Ray Davis at 405, Bucky Irving 406, Tyrone, like any of these guys, even Braylon Allen at the end of the round, like any of these guys would have been better shots. So somebody's going to be, scratching their heads and just, bang their head against the wall at the end of the day, looking at like, what did I do here? So, on that note, I may have mentioned a couple of these, but who do you think was a player that was picked far too low? Why did we fade these guys? Who got faded way too far?
It's crazy too, because I actually traded up into this position for this pick. I said Bucky Irving. I know it's obviously a little bit homery of me to pick my own dude that I picked, but Bucky Irving sitting there at 406, which is actually the 407 because Roman Wilson went at the 213. It's just crazy value for a dude that has a pretty obvious path. Whether it's a path to being a starter, I can't tell you, but it's a path to usage. And the reality is that Rachaad White is one of the most inefficient runners in the NFL. It's just point blank a fact. Mm-hmm. Anyone that they draft after Rachaad White has started a match or a game really makes you think that there is an opportunity there for someone else to be running the ball. Whether or not his best trait happens to also be Rachaad White's best trait, which is running after the catch, that's beside the point. It just means that there's other opportunity for him to be there. So why not take that shot at the 407?
406, right?
406, sorry, 406, but 407 because of the.
Oh, sorry. That's.
But you're right. You're right. On the board, 406. Okay. My bad.
I keep not mentioning to our audience that we have like a supplemental round, and that's what the fifth round is. That's empty. So we have one supplemental pick at the end of the second round that goes to the toilet bowl winner, and that's what that is. So yes, you're right. 407 actually, and no homerism. If anybody watched the DU2 draft review, they know that Jake shat all over his own draft. So he bought himself some credit.
I did.
All right, you're allowed to shout your own pick here, and I think it's a good one that went too low that you capitalized on. For me, it's Ray Davis. Ray Davis going one pick before Bucky Irving it's just a little too far past Will Shipley, past Dylan Lobby, past Tez Walker. He should be going in the Vidal range. He should be going over Wiley and Theo Johnson and Brendan Rice. and maybe even Spencer Rattler, like, because you can get Spencer Rattler later. But you do your thing there. That's fine. I think Spencer Rattler's fine. But at that point, like, that's where you need to start, I think, taking a look at Davis, Vidal, and that just didn't happen here. They were faded. Not Vidal as much, but Ray Davis, Bucky Irving, who we've seen Irving in the third round. So yeah, I just think it was a little too low for my liking. I was looking at this trying to find a way to get in there and make some picks, and I couldn't really find a good way to do it, unfortunately. So everybody else got to capitalize on the mistakes made. So who do you think was the biggest mistake in this draft?
I'm just going to repeat myself because I'm a broken record, but it has to be AD Mitchell. It's just so out there that it's just one of those picks that I keep trying to put a reason behind, and it just doesn't make sense. If you don't want the assets that are available there, the Jonathan Brooks, the Trey Bensons, the Bo Nixes, like, trade back, get additional assets. There's no reason to just acquire the guy that you like. I just don't believe in it, especially in the first round. You know that someone will trade out for that pick. That's just the reality of it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where I just kind of have to agree, and I don't want to, like, belabor the point or anything and keep going. I think you nailed it, but it's just I mean, we could point out Jared Wiley as, like, the biggest mistake, sure. Like, there's some other ones, but I just think if we're being honest with ourselves, that's the one that we're not going to see in too many other drafts. So yeah, that one I think I agree with. Best draft. What team do you think in our DU3 draft had the best draft?
Yeah, I think it's the man, the myth, the legend, the 101, Lefty Joe F. And, it's funny because he doesn't go the traditional Superflex route and go Caleb, but I think he ends up acquiring all of the value that he needed to at every single pick outside of probably that 101. I think you could say, sure, he lost on the 101 just on true Superflex value for the true QB1. But outside of that, being able to take McCarthy and Adunze at the 106, 107, being able to get Worthy at the 110, being able to get Brooks at the 201, which I think is just incredible value, being able to get Burton at the 301, Baker and Vidal, like, those late round picks add so much additional value to his team. And knowing his build, this draft just makes so much sense. And it makes me nauseous because I'm like, we've seen this in the other DU leagues. This just feels like another Dylan build that you're looking at it. He's just acquiring more and more assets that are going to just easily flip. He'll easily flip them into additional value. Whether or not these players hit isn't even important. It's just how he's acquiring value into his teams. And this is just, honestly, it's so expertly done that it, like, makes me nauseous. What about you?
I love that. Yeah, this is a good one to point out too, because Marvin Harrison goes 101 here. That's not the most typical thing. I think it happens, probably 30-25% of leagues, whatever it is. But he did do a pretty good job here of capitalizing after doing that and securing the best skill position player in this class, hands down, and the quarterback in arguably the second best situation. So, I think Caleb obviously has the best situation, but McCarthy and such a good one. And then everything after that. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. So, just trying to give a little different shout here in a team that I did think also had a really good draft. I want to give Doza just a quick shout. I think, he went chalk for the most part here. Like, this isn't like he didn't get super crazy values or anything like that, but he just took great picks where they were. Like Drake May at 105, perfect. Trey Benson, 2-4, perfect. Pearsall, pretty much perfect. And then Ray Davis, like I at 405, which I already mentioned, shouldn't be going that late. So I think it's hard to get away from, Joe having the best draft. I think I agree, but just trying to give somebody else a shout here. I thought this was a really well done job, just taking the values and not doing too much. Okay, so with that, talking about the best drafts, switch gears. Let's talk about the worst draft. Who do you think had the worst draft in DU3?
Yeah, I honestly think it's going to be our boy Bakash, 77, sitting there at the 111. I'm not upset with the legit pick. I just think it's really just not capitalizing off your three picks where you are taking Jared Wiley where we did. We won't cover him anymore. And then still, Braylon Allen is another guy who I do tend to see drop into waivers more often than not, or he's sitting there right at the last pick of the draft. And I do think there are actually some additional guys that I think have a little bit more value. And the reason I say that is because the Jets' backfield is just so obnoxiously crowded that I just don't really want to mess with it. And I didn't like him as a prospect, which is probably the inherent bias I already have. So, you're sitting there with a running back room with 4 running backs, all 4 of them young. Where's Braylon Allen going to go? Like, I just don't get it. But that's where I'm at with that draft. What about you?
Oh man, Matt's catching some heat today. I didn't love Matt's draft, man. Like I just think there was more opportunity here personally to take advantage of and be a little bit more risk averse. I think that's, and some people just play the game differently. But for me, where Brendan Rice went, there's some other options. Like we talked about at the running back, same thing, Theo Johnson running backs. But Theo Johnson, honestly, not even like the worst pick of this. Like, it's fine if that's what he did there. If he went like maybe Vidal where Rice is and he went Brooks where Mitchell is, like, or even if you want to reach on Knicks or whatever, like something else there, I think could have been done. So for me, this was just a little bit underwhelming draft given the picks that he had and what was available around. So this was a fun draft. Really enjoyed the Dynasty Underdog Listener 3 crew. They are one of the more energetic crews. So these are always really, really cool drafts with a lot of energy and a lot of trading and all that good stuff. So hope everybody enjoyed us walking through the Dynasty Underdog Listener League 3 rookie draft. We have one more to go. Dynasty Underdog Listener League 4. Please stay tuned. Please subscribe to the channel. Hope you enjoy what we got cooking here. Thank you. Peace out.